I have a question for you. Are you feeling abundant today? Who is feeling abundant? Because after today's guest speaker, you are all going to be feeling not just abundant, you are going to be feeling super abundant. It is my pleasure to introduce Mr. Gale Pooley. Gale is an economist, writer, and co-author of the award-winning book Superabundance, which is here on the screen. A story of population growth, innovation, and human flourishing on an infinitely bountiful planet. This book has been reviewed on the Wall Street Journal, the Economist, the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Atlantic, and many other very fancy-sounding publications, which they are very fancy. I'm sorry, I don't mean to diminish that. I'm sure it's incredibly well-reviewed. Pooley has taught at a wide variety of institutions, including Utah Tech University, where he currently teaches, Brigham Young University, Hawaii, Al Faisal University in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, Brigham Young University, Idaho, Boise State University, and the College of Idaho. He teaches the Economics of Human Flourishing course at the Peterson Academy with Dr. Marian Tupy, his co-author of the book. Dr. Pooley earned his BBA in economics at Boise State University, did graduate work at Montana State University, and obtained his PhD at the University of Idaho. He's traveled to 35 countries and also earned the MAI, SRA, FRICS, and CCIM professional designations. But more than all of those things, I just want to say personally, Gale has been incredibly generous to be here today. He drove up from St. George to share his time with us and his experience. So please welcome Gale Pooley. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah, that's great. Thank you very much for the opportunity to come to your beautiful campus today. The first time I've been here. I've stopped out here at one of your little restaurants several times. So that's all I know of your beautiful little town. So thank you, Russ, for the opportunity to come here and make this presentation. Do any of you remember this guy in this movie, Avengers, Infinity War? You remember what he said? Thanos, he makes this statement. He says, the universe is finite, its resources finite. If life is left unchecked, life will cease to exist. It needs correction. So where did he come up with this idea? Where did he come up with this idea? I think he came up with this idea that's been around for over 200 years from a guy that wrote a book in 1798. You might have heard of him, Thomas Malthus. And in his book, it was called The Principle of Population. And in his book, he makes this argument. He says, I think that food has this potential to grow at a linear rate or an arithmetic rate, but population grows at an exponential rate or a geometric rate. So this gap that we're going to expect to have happen is going to result in this collapse of civilization. We're going to run out of food. We're going to run out of food. Okay? So we have that book that's been around for over 200 years that has had this great deal of influence on people's thinking about resources and population, life and resources. When Thomas Carlyle read this book, he said, economics is like the dismal science. That's where we get this term. Economics is a dismal science because of this Malthusian thinking about this relationship between population and resources. In 1968, a biologist at Stanford writes a book called The Population Bomb. If you talk to your parents or grandparents, they might have had to have read this book when they were in high school. I had to read this book in high school. And in this book, Paul Ehrlich is the author's name. He makes a number of claims, basically that England's not going to exist in 20 years, that there's no hope for humanity, that we're facing this huge collapse due to population. He talks about the population bomb, that we're running out of resources. Well, there was an obscure economist that had read the book and initially said, well, it sounds like the logic makes sense, but maybe what I should do is I should empirically test this. I should go and actually look at the data, the facts about what's happening to resources. And in economics, the quantity of something's interesting to us, but what's much more interesting is the price of something. The price tells us about how scarce something is or abundant it is. So he began to look at the price, the historical prices of lots of different non-renewable resources like copper, like wheat, like all kinds of things. And what did he discover? He discovered that as population increased, the prices went down, which would suggest that more people were making things more abundant. So his argument was, look, population is going to increase. It actually increases kind of at a linear rate, but food and resources are increasing at a geometric rate. The opposite. So he writes an article, and it's published in Science, the journal Science. And the title of the article is Resources, Population, Environment, an Oversupply of False Bad News. Well, when this article gets published, suddenly, because he's really challenging Paul Ehrlich's ideas in his book, it begins this huge dispute between these two. And they're going back and forth, and it gets really personal. And finally, Julian Simon, the economist, throws up his hands and says, how about we just bet? Let's do a bet. And he said, look, Paul, you pick any non-renewable resource for over 5 years, for over a year, and I'll bet you that it's going to become more abundant, that the price is going to be lower. Once again, what does price tell us? It tells us if things are becoming more or less abundant. So Ehrlich says, I'd love to take your money. So he picked 5 resources, copper, chromium, nickel, tin, and tungsten. These aren't things that we can grow. There's a finite number of atoms of all of these resources on the planet. They established a bet, a $1,000 basis, and the bet was going to be for 10 years. So it's from 1980 to 1990. What happened in those 10 years? What happened in those 10 years with those 5 metals? Well, this decade, the 1980s, also was the decade where we witnessed the highest increase in population on the planet. We added 850 million people to the planet, a 19% increase in the population on the planet. So what would you expect to have happen? Well, most people would say, to get more people, you're going to run out of stuff because we have a finite number of atoms. Actually, what happened is the inflation-adjusted price fell by 36%. So Julian Simon walks out to his mailbox, and in the mailbox there was an envelope, and inside of that envelope was this check. And I think it's one of the most important checks ever written in economics. The real inflation-adjusted price had fallen by 36%. How is it possible that if you increase the number of people, that prices go down? How is that possible? Well, Julian Simon had an explanation for that. He explained it this way. Before I tell you the explanation, we're in class, right? How about a quiz? Yeah. How many keys are on a piano? We have some music people here, right? How many keys are on a piano? Anybody? 88. Who said 88? The teacher doesn't count. He gave you the answer. 88 is the correct answer. So, how many songs are in a piano? How many songs are in a piano? It's actually a trick question. If you were to ask Thanos, how many songs are in a piano, what would he say? He would say, you got 88 keys, you must only have 88 songs. Right? Don't you think that doesn't make sense? But you're kind of right. Actually, there are no songs in the piano. Where are the songs?
In you, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, they are. They're in the minds of human beings, right? And the piano by itself with no music really doesn't have any value, does it? I mean, they kind of look interesting, but the value is in the music. The keys are the atoms, the music is knowledge. And that's the distinction we want to make. Actually, you answered that question, so you get, this is actually large, but you are? Okay, well you get this little cartoon. This is one of my favorite cartoons. It's Julian Simon handing over the check. Actually, Paul Ehrlich handing over the check to Julian Simon. So we just put "wanna bet" on there.
Oh, nice.
So that's yours. Okay, you got that question right. All right, so here's what we want to do is we want to talk about three foundation principles in this theory and in this framework that we use to understand this relationship between resources and population. And the three principles are, first, wealth is knowledge, growth is learning, and money is time. And these were offered by another economist, George Gilder. So, as we think about this, first of all, any hard science students in here? Physics, science students? Well, science will tell you that, physics will tell you, well, we study atoms. Our business is atoms. But economics is not physics. Economics does not study atoms. What economics studies is knowledge. Now, if we define resources as only being equal to atoms, and we think about Thanos, and he said, what? Are there a finite number of atoms on the planet? Yeah, absolutely they are. But resources are not atoms. In fact, atoms without knowledge have no economic value. So the way to think about resources is it's really atoms plus knowledge. Okay? Now, is there a limit to the amount of undiscovered knowledge? Is there a limit? No. It doesn't appear to be any limit to the knowledge that's out there. So if knowledge is infinite, what does that allow resources to become?
Unlimited as well, right?
Right, unlimited as well. Back to this idea of how many songs are in a piano. We actually don't know. But those combinations of just 88 keys, you can come up with an infinite combination of those potential songs. Most all products contain some atoms, but what they really contain is knowledge. And knowledge is what makes them valuable. So, the universe is finite, but resources are what? If you make this assumption about how you define a resource, resources are really infinite. Okay? So, are we okay with the first idea? That wealth is really knowledge. It's knowledge. What's the difference between our age and the Stone Age? They had the same number of atoms that we have. What's the difference? Knowledge. It's our discovery and creation of knowledge that's allowed us to transform these atoms into valuable resources. So, let's think about the second idea, that growth is learning. Now, what we've discovered is every time someone makes something, every time they double their output, their costs drop between 20 and 30%. How could your costs drop by that much? It's because every time you make something, don't you learn something? And if you learn something, that should ultimately allow you to lower the cost. And if you lower the cost, you can lower the price. If you lower the price, you can sell more. And if you can sell more, it creates this virtuous spiral of value creation. So, how do we create more wealth? We have to go discover more knowledge. How do we do that? We actually go out and build things. Now, the person that I think, and you might not agree with me, but I think the person that we could look to say, who's a guy that's kind of figured out how learning curves work? I think it's this guy. He's got these 6 different companies. And what's he been doing with those companies? Well, take a look at his car company. Look at the production of units. What's it look like he's doing? It looks like he's on a learning curve, right? Because the more he makes, the more he learns. The more he learns, the lower he can reduce his costs, and the more he can sell. He has 5 million cars out there available. They collect 100,000 miles of data every minute. These things they're cars, they're physical cars, but they're really what? They're knowledge collection devices. Knowledge collection devices. You've probably seen this picture recently, right? What he was able to. When I first saw that, I thought that's like a computer-generated thing. That's not real. And I realized, no, it actually is real. He says it's really science fiction without the fiction. Without the fiction. If you look at what he's doing with his rockets, you see the same kind of thing. What's he doing? It's like once a year, once a month, once a week. He gets on this learning curve. If you look at one of his rockets and you go up close to it, I think what you would see is you see this. Instructions. Launch, learn, and repeat, right? Get onto a learning curve and be the fastest learner out there, and you're going to accumulate this knowledge that's going to allow you to build these products that are going to be phenomenal products because you have the knowledge to be able to do these things. Here's a look at the rockets over the last 4 years. Look at the 1, 2, and 3. What's happening to those rockets? Actually, 3 is much more powerful than 1. And why is that? Because he's figured out how he can either replace the part or reduce the part. Inside of the Raptor 3, he's moved a lot of those parts inside and made them much smaller. How is it possible for him to do that? Every launch, he's learning something. He's on this learning curve. And what's the objective? He wants to get the cost of going to space down to $100 a pound. Yeah, it was $10,000 when he started. Up here, Falcon 1, he was $10,000 over that. Almost $10,000, the Falcon 1, and he's clear down here. He's dropped the price by a factor of 10. And his goal is to drop it by another factor of 10 in the next 10 years. That's like going from $100 down to $1. Okay? How's he going to do that? He's going to get on the learning curve and figure out how to do that. You look at his Starlink, the satellite system that he has?
Yeah.
Yeah. Look at that learning curve there. What he's doing. In 2019, he launched his first rocket out with these satellites on it, had 60 satellites. Now he's got almost 7,000 satellites around the globe. But look at that curve. Once again, what's he trying to do? If I can learn faster than anybody, I'll be able to create these products that will be affordable for everybody on the planet. Now, some of you might have heard of this guy, Jordan Peterson. He makes this statement. He says, if you can do the same amount in half the time, you're twice as smart. You've doubled your knowledge. Okay? You've doubled your knowledge. And what can we also say about knowledge? Knowledge is different than a Snickers bar. Knowledge is different. If I have a Snickers bar and I share it with you, I only have a half a bar, you have the other half. But if I have some knowledge, like a song, and I share it with you, did I lose the song? No, I didn't. We've actually doubled the knowledge. The economics of knowledge are much different than the economics of the finite physical world. So the third principle that we want to talk about is money is time. You might have heard time is money. That's not really true. Money is time. We buy things with money, but we really pay for them with our time. And I want to show you how we illustrate this. You have a money price, and that's what's expressed in dollars and cents, but you also have a time price, and the time price can be expressed in hours and minutes. Back to this idea, you buy things with money, but how do you really pay for it? I've got to use my time to go out and earn the money. That's really what it costs me, is how much time does that cost me? Do you ever go to the store and think, oh, I can buy this, but I'm going to have to work for 2 hours to buy this thing, okay? So a time price is essentially what the money price is divided by your hourly income. So who likes pizza? It's kind of pizza time right now already.
Yeah.
I wish I had some pizzas to give out. But let's do a little analysis on time pricing a pizza. If a pizza costs $20 and you're earning $20 an hour, what was the time price of that pizza?
An hour.
Wasn't it an hour or 60 minutes? Now, what if the price of the pizza goes up to $22, but your income goes up to $24? Now what is the time price? I think it's 0.92 hours, or about 55 minutes. About 55 minutes. So that time price of the pizza has fallen by 5 minutes, right? It's actually, we could calculate the percentage change and say it's actually fallen by about 8%, the time price of the pizza. Now, the other way to think about it is if you're going to spend an hour earning the money to buy a pizza today, how much pizza could you get? Well, you just flip the ratio and now you get what? You get about 10% more pizza. See, what's happening is the time price changing over time. That's what we want to look at. It's the time price over time that really tells us if things are becoming more or less abundant. Okay? Time is a much better way to measure than money. A much better way for a number of reasons. First reason is the time price contains more information. Things can get more expensive, but they can actually get more affordable at the same time. As long as your hourly income is increasing faster than prices, the time price is decreasing. It contains more information because it's a ratio, it's two numbers. Ratios contain more information than just single variables. Okay, you're comparing it to something, right? The second reason is it transcends all of this contention and subjectivity of people arguing about what the inflation rate is. You've probably heard about the inflation rate. Somebody said, well, it went up at 8%, it went up at 4%. You can transcend that. You don't have to deal with the inflation rate anymore. You can go directly to a time price. So you can eliminate any subjectivity. You can calculate a time price on any product at any time in history, any place in history, with any currency. I can go back to Paris in 1800 and figure out what it cost the time price of a loaf of bread. Right? Well, it cost this much in francs, and people were earning that much. What's the ratio? Oh, a loaf of bread cost an hour and 15 minutes in 1850. What does it cost today? I can do the same calculation today. So it's this beautiful way to be able to compare our standard of living over time. The fourth reason is there are 7 units of measurement in science. 7 of them. 6 of those units go back to time. Time is this really universal measurement. Everybody has this sense of what time is. The other beauty of time is it can't be inflated or counterfeited. I can't inflate or counterfeit time. You can do that with money. The other factor that's really essential is we have this perfect equality of time. When we get up in the morning, each one of us have 24 hours a day. So comparing what we get to do with our time over time is also very important. What do you get to spend your 24 hours doing today compared to what you got to do yesterday? The last item is you cannot buy or sell time. If you could buy time, rich people would never die. You cannot buy or sell time. So measuring time. Time is the variable we want to use in science to be able to measure how well we're doing. So how I got involved in this project, this book, is that I was curious about this bet. I've always been curious about it. And I found a guy on Twitter, thank heavens for Twitter, that was also curious about it. And we got together and we said, what would happen if you had this bet again today? Now, the 2 problems with the bet that people criticize the bet over is it was only for 5 items and it was only for 10 years. So what we did is we said, let's expand the data set to 50 items. So we looked at fuel, we looked at oil prices, natural gas prices, coal prices. We looked at food like corn, barley, wheat, pork, chicken, beef, oranges. We looked at materials like lumber and cotton. We looked at metals like aluminum and iron. The World Bank keeps track of all of these prices every month, so it was very easy to go get these prices back to 1980. So we do this analysis of all these prices, and we actually went from 1980 to 2018 when we did this initial analysis. So it was a 38-year period. What do you think we discovered about these 50 kind of basic commodities? If you're going to go start a new planet someplace, what would you want to have with you? We felt like these 50 items were these basic commodities that you would want to have. Okay? What do you think happened to the time price over this period from 1980 to 2018? Well, the average time price fell by 75%. There was not a single one of these commodities that had gotten more expensive in terms of the time price. They'd all fallen by an average of 75%. Some of them fell by 90%. What does it mean when something's on sale for 75%? It means now you get 4 for the price of 1, right? You get 4 for the price of 1. So you go from 1 to 4, that means you've enjoyed a 300% increase in your time value. The value of your time now gets you 300% more than it did in 1980. Well, we also then compared that to the population. From 1980 to 2018, population increased about 75%. That's kind of interesting. Every time you increase population by 1%, the time prices went down by 1%. Why is that the case? Because we're discovering knowledge faster than we're making people. Does that make sense? And that's what Simon made this argument. What's interesting is look at that ratio. Every time you added 1% to the population, what happened to your abundance? We know that the abundance increased by 300%, population increased by 75%. It looks like that ratio is about 4%. Every time you add 1% more to the population, everybody gets 4% more. Okay? Think about the size of your pizza, the slice that you get. The slice is doing what? Everybody's individual slice is getting bigger. But what else is also happening to the size of the pie? The pie can get bigger two ways. You can get bigger slices, but you can also have more slices. So we add 75% more people, and everybody's slice is bigger. So we're getting this double effect in terms of abundance. You okay with me on that one? Now, what would Thanos say? He would say, look, the pie is fixed. You add more people, and everybody's slice gets smaller. Well, that kind of makes sense in theory, but what's the empirical evidence to support that? When you look at the actual facts, it's like, no, that's not what happened. That's not what happened. The opposite of that happened. When you added more people, everybody's slice got bigger because things got cheaper. And as we looked around, it's like everything's getting cheaper. We looked at these commodities. We then do the book, and we started looking at all kinds of different things. And everything we found, almost invariably, the time price has been decreasing. Now remember, things used to cost less in money, but they were more expensive in time. Why is that? Because people didn't earn nearly as much per hour as they do today. What it also tells us is that things can become more expensive. They can become more expensive, but more affordable. Because as long as your income, hourly income is increasing faster than prices, the time price is going down. Let me give you a couple of examples. If you go back to 1910, there was a company called Sears Roebuck. Your grandparents will probably tell you about this. They used to publish these catalogs. You can get these big catalogs. They were like the Amazon of their day. You get this catalog out and you'd find stuff and you could order things and you'd send a check and then pretty soon here this product would show up. You could buy all kinds of things. You could buy all kinds of things in this catalog. Once again, it was like the Amazon Walmart of its day. Well, you go back to 1910 and you could find this basic bicycle. It was $11.95. Was that a good deal? Does $11.95 sound like a good deal? And the correct answer is always what? In econ, whatever, if you're taking an econ class, the correct answer is always, it depends. What does it depend on? What does it depend on?
How much time people would have to take to earn that?
And you could shorten that by saying, what were people's hourly earning?
Yep.
Well, back then, guess what? They're earning like 11 cents an hour. So it would take them 140 hours to buy one of these bikes. Today, when I did this study, it was in 2023, I found this bike on Walmart that looked like it was pretty silly. Actually, it was better. It was a 21 speed. It had a shock on it, had disc brakes on it. It was $98. Now, the price had gone up. The money price had gone up, but what about the time price? Well, now people are earning, if you're unskilled worker, you're earning about $17 an hour on the average. So for the time it took you to earn the money to buy one bike in 1910, you can buy 18 bikes today. If you spend 140 hours working to earn the money, you could buy 18 of those bikes today. So our bicycle abundance has increased dramatically over the last 115 years. Do you see what we're doing there? So 1952, they introduced air conditioning. This place would not be possible without air conditioning, right? Imagine what life would be like here without air conditioning. Yeah, St. George is like, that would be, I don't know how those people live down there. 1952, they come out with an air conditioner. It's $350. Is that a good deal? Well, it depends. How much were people earning? How much were people earning? When we did the analysis on air conditioners, and we compared it to what you could buy an air conditioner today for, and then adjusted for the wages, for the time price to buy an air conditioner in 1952, you can buy over 45 of these air conditioners today, and they have remote controls with them. Okay? One of my favorites is in 1961, Black & Decker introduced the portable drill, right? Anybody have one of these things? Yeah, you can find one, they're like $30 if you kind of shop around for one. So for 1961, for the time price of one, you get almost 45 of these drills today, okay? My grandpa used to always say to me, look, when I was a kid, I could buy a candy bar for a nickel and a soda was a dime. I say, yeah, Grandpa, it cost a lot, but how much were you earning? Well, when we do the analysis on the time price, yeah, it cost you 5 cents to buy a candy bar, but you were only making 5 cents an hour. So it cost you an hour, right? It cost you an hour to buy that thing, okay? So we had this tremendous increase in all of these products because we're doing what? We're discovering knowledge that's allowing us to make these things much more affordable, and it's also allowing us to earn much more per hour. We earn much more per hour because we have this knowledge that allows us to do that. Jordan Peterson makes this other observation that I love. He says, compare yourself to who you were yesterday, not to who someone else is today. Why would you want to do that? When you compare yourself to someone else today, I always feel like a loser. There's always someone younger, richer, more attractive, smarter. It's like I feel like a loser. If you compare yourself, what he's saying is compare yourself over time. What was your life like yesterday? What was your parents' life like? What were your grandparents' life like? If you make that comparison, what's your conclusion? I think that you can be nothing but just profoundly grateful for what your life is today, what our life has become today, because of these abundances that we enjoy. Now, Senator Bernie Sanders recently said there should be no billionaires. It's like, Bernie, I'm sorry to tell you, but you're kind of late because everybody is a billionaire today. Let me explain why. Okay? How many of you have one of these? Okay? If I ask you, what would I have to pay you to never use your phone or the internet again? What would I have to pay you? Ooh, somebody said, ooh, a big number. Anybody do it for $1,000? How about $1 million? How
Closer.
about 5 million? I have not found anybody that's willing to do it at your age for under 5 million. And why is that? It's not what you pay for something that counts, it's how much you value it, right? And I think the ability to walk around with this little device in your hand, in your pocket, is worth millions to you. It really is. Do you know Apple has spent over $100 billion to develop this device? $100 billion, and you get it for like $2 a day. You can get it in a plan for $2 a day. That's like $60 a month. You don't have to have $1 billion to enjoy the benefits of $1 billion, because many of these products are what? They're knowledge products. When I create something with knowledge, I can share it with you. And I don't lose the thing, okay? You like movies? The Thanos movie? If you take the top 10 movies in terms of their costs, top 10 movies of all time in terms of their grosses, it cost about $2.8 billion to create those movies. Why would someone spend $2.8 billion and only charge you $10 to watch that thing? Because movies are knowledge. They're a knowledge product. They have a really high development cost, but the cost to share it with people is really, really low. And the reason that people are able to do this is there are so many of us. There's so many of us that can help them to recover those development costs. It costs about $1 to $2 billion to make a new drug today. But once you've come up with the recipe for that new drug, the pill itself can cost you like $1 or $2 to make the pill. So what should the price be? $2 billion or $1? Well, it depends on how many people there are. If you got 1 billion people on the planet that need that pill, you could sell that pill for $2 and still make money, right? Because although it's physical, it's really knowledge. It's the arrangement of the atoms that give the atoms their value. And that arrangement is the schedule that arrangement is the creativity of entrepreneurship. How can I arrange things in a new way that creates value? Anybody flown one of these? Been on one of these? We have billions, if not trillions of dollars invested in our air flight systems, the airplanes, the airports, all the people that work with this, all the technology, all the insurance, all the parts that go with this. And I can buy a ticket for a couple $100 to go fly off to Denver or Chicago? It's like, that's incredible. Once again, we're billionaires. We get the benefit of these billions of dollars that have been spent, but it's not ours. We didn't have to spend the money, okay? We're so fortunate that people have gone before us and spent this money. Anybody gone on a cruise? You will go on a cruise someday. Why? Because they're so cheap. They're so cheap to go on a cruise. This is the actual largest cruise ship on the planet today. Cost these guys $2 billion to construct this thing. You can get a cruise ticket for it's like $200 a day. How could you go on, how could you enjoy, and that includes entertainment and food. How is it that something that costs $2 billion I can enjoy for $100 a day? Because it's a knowledge product, okay? And there are so many of us. You think about the books on the planet, all of the books in the libraries across the planet. What does it cost you to access those? Now, maybe I shouldn't ask you right now because you've paid for some textbooks, right? All right, perfect. You pay for some textbooks. But basically, books now they approach free, right? And you can put them on these small devices. Think about music. What's it cost you to access a song today? You got these different sources that let you stream these songs. Any song that over 200 million songs are on Spotify's library. Google Maps, the same thing. You use Google Maps. How much has Google spent to create that product? Millions. You don't have to spend the money. So how can things be so cheap if they cost so much? Because there are so many of us, okay? Can have really high development cost, but a really low unit cost. Once you figure it out, it doesn't cost you very much to make a copy of that thing. All right, I want to share with you a little video here.
I can't emphasize this enough. There are not enough people. I think one of the biggest risks to civilization is the low growth rate and the rapidly declining growth rate. It is, and yet so many people, including smart people, think that there are too many people in the world and think that the population is growing out of control. It's completely the opposite. Please look at the numbers. If people don't have more children, civilization is going to crumble. Mark my words.
Is this why you have so many children?
I'm sure that's a good example. Yeah. You know, gotta practice what I preach.
Okay. I wouldn't recommend you practicing his method of population, but isn't there a contrast between these two? Elon Musk says what? There's not enough people. We've got plenty of resources. There's not enough people. Thanos says no. We've got too many people. We're going to run out. And remember he said, please take a look at the numbers. Look at these numbers. And when we do, what do we find? Well, let's take a look at the world fertility rate. In order for us to just maintain population, every woman has got to have 2.1 children. Every woman's got to have 2.1 children. That replacement rate is 2.1. So what's happened to that fertility rate? Well, it's gone like this. It's almost down to 2.25. That's on the world. But if we dig deeper and look at the actual countries, there's the United States. We're at 1.62. The only reason our population in the U.S. is growing is we have immigration. We're not making more Americans. We have immigration. You can go to some places. If you go to China, it's 0.99. And if you go to South Korea, it's 0.72. South Koreans just kind of stopped making Koreans. South Koreans. Yeah, we got a major problem there. The only place that's actually above this is the African continent. They're still up above 4. The future really for population is Africa. Now we can drill down and look at the U.S. What do we know about the U.S.? If we just go back to what's the replacement rate again? 2.1, right? Remember that number, 2.1. Here's the U.S. from 2008. Okay, we've been under replacement level. How about our beautiful state here of Utah? Where do you think we are? Well, we're kind of been following those trends. There's Vermont. Wow. And there is there's a couple states above us. South Dakota is actually above Utah. What does that mean for our future? You know, Elon says that most countries should view their population as the single biggest problem they have to solve. Because if we stop making human beings, everything else, it's game over. It's really game over. Innovation requires not only people, but people with this freedom to think about what they want to do, this ability to create. Science can only flourish and entrepreneurship can only flourish in this environment where people are free to think and free to speak, free to express themselves, free to test out their ideas with other people. So in conclusion, what I would say is be pro-creative. Not only creative in what you can come up with, but creative in terms of being able to create another human life. Having a family, George Gilder, the guy that came up with these 3 principles, he says creating a family is the most entrepreneurial thing that you can do. And why would we say that? Because there has really never been another time on this planet where it's been better to create life. There's never been a better time. So in summary, what we would say is the old economics versus the new economics. Under the old economics, we said that resources were atoms. What's the new economics say? Resources are what?
Atoms.
Yeah, knowledge. Think in knowledge, not in atoms. Think in knowledge. It's knowledge that really transforms these atoms into resources. We measure things under the old system. We measured things with money. What should we measure things with? Time. Move from money to time. And then the third thing is, what should our perspective be? Should it be a perspective of scarcity? No, the perspective should be a perspective of abundance. How do we create more abundance? Economics is really the study of how people create value for one another by discovering new knowledge and then sharing that new knowledge with each other in markets. Julian Simon made this statement. He says, the ultimate resource is people, especially skilled, spirited, and hopeful young people, right? Endowed with liberty, who will exert their wills and imaginations for their own benefits. And so inevitably, they will benefit the rest of us as well. They're going to benefit the rest of us as well. So how happy are you with your life? I think your life is a function of your quality of life minus your envy. If your perspective is how you compare yourself to somebody else, you're going to be very disappointed. If your perspective is, no, I have this potential to be a creator, you have no limit in terms of what kind of a quality of life you have. If you have no envy, your quality of life, your happiness can really be infinite. This human capacity of growth and hope is really infinite. So, what are you going to be? You want to be a Thanos guy or you want to be a Musk guy? Do you want to follow this ideology of Thanos or the ideas of Elon in terms of being a creator? There's no better time. This really is the best time in the world's history to create more life, So, thank you. All right, so we got a few minutes here. 2 minutes. Happy to answer any questions or comments that you might have about. Okay.
Have you read the book The Rational Optimist?
Matt Ridley's one of my personal friends.
Oh, no way. Okay.
Yeah.
I've been reading that one, and I was like, that just goes hand in hand.
Yeah. In fact, the subtitle that we use with our book, I actually have a Substack that I write. I'll give you, if anybody's interested, I'll give you my card. You can subscribe to that. What we claim our book is it's really the antidote to irrational pessimism. Because when you think about it, why you're so pessimistic, there's no rational basis in your pessimism. It really is this perspective. If you move from thinking of yourself as this victim or somebody that's been oppressed to this idea that you can actually be a creator, move your perspective from being a victim to being a creator, and you'll find that you can live in this world of rational optimism. Lots and lots of reasons to be optimistic. What have we accomplished in the last 200 years here? Never been seen before in the history of humanity. And it looks like we're increasing at an increasing rate. Our potential to increase at an increasing rate is increasing. And some of you have heard about AI. I mean, AI is kind of this thing that everybody's worried about a little bit. I see AI as this ability to leverage your ability to discover and create and share more knowledge faster. It's going to allow you to get on a learning curve and move much faster. Okay? All right, any other Okay, well, thanks for coming to the presentation today.